Hello YouTube. I get a lot of emails from people wanting to know how I got involved in the occult. Well, tell the truth, I've always been interested in the occult. I don't think there's a starting date of when I got interested in the occult. If you want to get a starting date, I would say my birthday. That's when I got interested in the occult. I was born in October, so I'm pretty sure the first images that I saw as a child was of ghosts and goblins and people dressed up in, black and, dressed up as vampires and werewolves. So maybe that's got something to do with it. Those are the first images that I remember seeing, so blame Halloween, right? No. Halloween is a great time. It's my favorite time of the season. And those of you who know me personally know that I celebrate Halloween 365 days a year. It's just my favorite time of the year. The funny thing is I never dress up. I'm not really into dressing up. I just like the aura of Halloween. I like to watch other people dress up. Dressing up for me is like pointless because I wear black 99.9% of the time, and I dress a little different than your normal everyday citizen. So for me to dress up anymore would just be silly for me personally. I don't rule it out. It's just something that I don't necessarily do myself. I like watching other people. I like the people watch, I guess. Back in the early 70s, there used to be a television show here in Michigan, and the show had a host, and the host was called the Ghoul. And the Ghoul was a great guy. He would show these late night horror movies, and I used to stay up late at night as a child watching these horror movies, where I guess a lot of parents, they would send their kids to bed at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. I was up watching horror movies back in the 70s. And I had a great time. I remember watching The Screaming Skull. I remember watching, old Godzilla movies and just all kind of horror movies. The old Bela Lugosi stuff. And that's how I got interested in horror movies. And I've always saw horror movies as being something more than just, entertainment, I guess, or, a quick scare. I always saw them as being, something more, something a little bit more political, especially when you have to deal with zombies and the movies that George Romero came out with, Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead. If you watch those movies, he's actually trying to make a point on, certain things. Especially when zombies are attacking a city and people go and they hide out at the mall, and these brain dead zombies, when they were alive in real life, they probably spent most of their time in the mall. So when they're dead and they only have like this much of their brain left, where do they go? They go to the mall. Amusing social criticism. Yes. People who are brain dead, spend most of their time at the mall. Think about it, Do you want to be a consumer that just spends all of his time at the mall just buying stuff that you really don't need? Anyway, getting back on track. As I said before, I always saw horror movies as being, something more than just cheap entertainment, I guess. And let's see, what else got me into the occult? Music, of course. Not the way that Christians a lot of times believe that young kids get into the occult listening to rock and roll. With me, it wasn't necessarily rock and roll. It was classical music. One of my favorite violin players was Paganini. And those of you who go to my website, you can see a actual paper that I wrote when I was at Wayne State University called The Cult of the Virtuoso. I can't pronounce this word. The Cult of the Virtuoso. And it talks about these people back in, I believe it's the 18th century or whenever Paganini was around. They were so good on their instrument that people thought that they were in league with the devil or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, these people weren't, but they kind of latched on to that, and it was a good media ploy. Look at the great violinist. He's sold his soul to the devil so he can become a great violin player or whatever. And it was like that with Paganini. He was so good that, how can someone be that good on the violin? There's stories that Paganini would play his violin and he would break a string, and he would just go on playing. He would break another string and he would just go on and playing, and he would get down to his last string and he would finish whatever piece that he was playing, no problem. Of course, people say, well, he's just a little too good. He must have sold his soul to the devil, or he must be somehow in league with the devil. One of the things that they failed to realize is that it was a trick. It was just a trick just to kind of wow people. That's what musicians do. That's what we do. We kind of we do little things to bring attention to ourselves. And then there's also Liszt. People thought that he was so good on piano that, of course, he must be somehow in league with the devil or whatever. I also remember reading that the Catholic Church wouldn't give Paganini a Christian burial because all the things that were associated with him. And from my studying Paganini and Liszt and a lot of these guys, most of them, they weren't in league with the devil. It's just like the heavy metal back in the 80s. None of those guys were really, truly in league with the devil, except for maybe King Diamond or whatever. Things have changed now. Some of these black metal guys, they really believe in that stuff. So, more power to you. Anyway, getting back to what I was talking about. And then there's also the myth of the old blues guy who goes to the crossroads, and wants to be a great blues musician. So they go and they sell their soul so they can become a great guitar player or whatever. And those of you who know about Robert Johnson know that that's one of the stories that's associated with him. Is it true? I don't know. I think a lot of times these stories are just embellishments on the life of someone, just to make their life a little bit more interesting. Just, to bring people in, sort of like real people in, so people can get interested in their music. Another thing that got me interested in the occult is philosophy. I've always been interested in philosophy. One of the shows I remember watching as a kid was Kung Fu. And I've always liked the idea of the old wise men, teaching, the young child or the young student, the ways of life or whatever, things that he should do in his lifetime to be a better person. That's something that always been an interest to me. I've always wanted to study under people like that, and I have studied under people like that. So that definitely had a impact on me. So that's another reason why I'm into the occult. And it's kind of weird in a way, because I got interested in the occult more when I was later, when I was older, later on in life. Not necessarily because of magic, because I wanted to be, this great magician or whatever, and I wanted to, cast spells or whatever. I was always interested in the philosophy behind it. What's the philosophy behind it? How can this make me a better person? How can this, change my life in a better way? That was part of the reasons why I got involved in paganism and later witchcraft. it wasn't necessarily so I can cast spells or whatever. You know, if I wanted to get a girlfriend, you know, it was no problem. You know, you make sure that you know, you look good and you exercise, and you know, you're a good person or whatever. You have no problem getting a girlfriend. If you need a job, you go out and apply for, you know, jobs or whatever. So the idea of always casting spells for, you know, I need a new girlfriend, so I'm going to cast a spell for this, or I need this, or, you know, I got to do a spell for this. That's not the reason why I got involved in the occult. Anyway, hopefully this video was shed a little bit of light on how I got involved in the occult, or how I expressed the occult in my life, I guess. Because like I said earlier, I've always, the occult has always been a part of me. The first images I remember seeing when I was young are witches, vampires, and ghouls and stuff like that. And as time went on, I put one and one together and got two, and things kind of gravitated from there. Alright, until next time, love is the law, and peace.